Hello and welcome to Pitboards and Podiums with me, Maya Westwick. It is the third episode in my F1 for Beginners series today, so buckle up and let's talk F1. Alright guys, so today I'm going to talk to you about all of the flags that are used in Formula 1, and then obviously I'm going to give you some more glossary definitions. So the Formula 1 flag system is very, very important because that's how the marshals can communicate things to the drivers in terms of safety, in terms of disciplinary action from the stewards, all sorts. So I'm going to get into it today just so that you know, if you see it, you know what it is. So all of the flags are both waved by marshals situated around the circuit and displayed on digital light panels around the Formula 1 circuits to ensure that the messages are always as clear as possible for the drivers, taking changeable weather conditions and like day and night events and all of that sort of thing into consideration. Because obviously if the visibility is lower, sometimes it's a lot harder to see a fabric flag that's being waved by a marshal than it is to see like a flashing light screen next to the circuit. So starting with the green flag, this just means that the track is clear. It is usually used at the start of a warm-up lap, practice or qualifying session, or immediately after an incident that necessitated the use of one or more yellow flags. So it's basically just to say the track's clear, you can go racing as normal. The blue flag is used to inform a driver that they are about to be overtaken. So it's used when a driver is leaving the pit lane to warn them that traffic is approaching, and obviously that traffic will be going a lot faster than them. During practice sessions, it's used to inform a driver that a much faster car is close behind and about to overtake them. And during the race, it is shown to drivers who are about to be lapped. And these drivers, once they've been shown the blue flag, must allow this car that is about to lap them to do so at the earliest opportunity within 3 showings of the flag, or they will be penalised. The white flag is used to inform a driver that there is a much slower vehicle ahead. That is sometimes seen at the end of practice sessions when drivers are doing their practice starts. The yellow flag with red stripes is a motionless flag. It's not something that's waved. That is shown to inform drivers that there has been a deterioration in grip levels due to oil or water on the track surface, basically just warning them that they're going to have to drive a bit more carefully because they're not going to have the level of grip that they expect to have. The yellow flag is basically just a signal of danger, and you can have single waved or double waved yellows. Single waved yellows mean that the driver has to reduce their speed, they can't overtake anyone, and they must be prepared to change direction due to a hazard beside or partly on the track. It must be evident that the driver has reduced their speed during the relevant sectors, otherwise they will be penalised. Double wave yellows are more serious than that, and that means that the driver needs to reduce their speed significantly. Again, they can't overtake, and they must be prepared to change direction or stop completely due to a hazard either wholly or partly blocking the track. Double wave yellows are also used when there are marshals working on or beside the track as well to keep those people safe. During free practice and qualifying, it must be evident that a driver has not attempted to set a meaningful lap time, so they have to abandon their lap, but they don't have to pit because the track might be clear again by the next lap. It does just mean that if you were to see somebody in qualifying set their fastest lap time under double wave yellows, that would of course be investigated because that suggests that they haven't significantly slowed down and therefore they're endangering themselves and other people. A flag that you might not really notice is the code 60 flag, and that is when the race director may impose a speed limit around the entire track or any section of the track when double wave yellows are displayed during practice sessions, qualifying sessions, or the race. If a single speed limit is imposed around the entire track, this will be indicated with a single yellow flag and a board indicating FCY, meaning full course yellow, or a purple flag with a white circle containing the number 60, setting a 60 kilometers an hour speed limit. However, if a variable limit is imposed, if the speed limit is not the same all the way round, that will be indicated with a single yellow flag and a board indicating VSC, meaning virtual safety car, with specific slow zones marked at the start and end of each with double waved yellows and a board labelled slow, so that the drivers know that that is where they need to be going their slowest. The red flag is waved at the start line and each marshal post around the circuit when officials have stopped practice, qualifying or the race, with reasons ranging from serious incidents to poor weather conditions. During practice sessions, if the session is red flagged, the timer will continue to count down, and that means that teams do lose out on practice time. However, during qualifying and the race, the timer is effectively paused, so the time won't continue to go down in qualifying. It will pause where it is, and then once the session's resumed, they'll have that long left. And it's effectively the same within the race, just depending on how long the red flag is and all of that sort of thing. It could be that the race isn't able to completely finish because there are time limits on it now, but it just means that the clock has stopped, so no time has to be lost necessarily. Under a red flag, drivers are required to reduce their speed and proceed slowly back to the pits. In practice or qualifying sessions, they have to go back into their respective garages in the pits, and in the race itself, they have to then go and line up at the pit exit of the pit lane to await instructions, and that would be in the order that they enter the pit lane. Of course, under red flag, you can't overtake as you're going back round to the pits, so it's basically the order that they were on track when whatever incident it was happened. That doesn't always mean that it's completely in the right order, because obviously if people are on different laps, if someone is in P10 and they're the first person to get to the pits when there's a red flag, they would be like at the front of the line because they hadn't yet started the next lap, because people obviously can't drive backwards into the pits. There have been incidences where drivers have been penalised for not diving into the pits. There was an incident with Lando Norris a few years ago where when the red flag came out, he believed he was too close to the pit entry to safely get into the pits on that lap, so he carried on around and then he got penalised for not going straight into the pits. It does happen, but yeah, the ruling is as soon as the red flag has been showed, you have to go straight to the pits. The black flag is used to disqualify a driver. It orders them to return to the garage at once, and the decision to show that flag rests solely with the stewards. The black and orange flag is a black flag with an orange circle. That informs the driver that their car has got mechanical problems which are likely to pose a risk either to themselves or to others, and they must stop in the pits as soon as possible. If the problems can be rectified to the satisfaction of the chief scrutineer, then that car is allowed to rejoin the race. But obviously, however long they would have lost in the pits, they've lost that much time of the race. And when this is shown, it is accompanied with the driver's race number, so that if there's a few cars passing it at once, they know who it's for. The black and white flag is shown as a warning to drivers that they have been reported to the stewards for unsportsmanlike behaviour, and that is also accompanied by the driver's race number. It's effectively a warning before they get any penalties or before they get disqualified from the race. That can be for things like exceeding track limits, or it could also be for dangerous driving that doesn't warrant a straight black flag. And the checkered flag is the black and white checkered flag that is waved from above the pit wall and marks the end of any practice session, qualifying session or race, and it is waved until all competing cars have reached it. So for some races that means the person waving it is waving it for a very long time, because sometimes there's like 2 minutes between the first driver and the last driver actually reaching the checkered flag. Okay, now onto the glossary side of things. So the first thing I'm going to talk about is brake balance. Brake balance involves adjusting the distribution of braking force between the front and the rear brakes, and that influences stability, stopping power and tyre wear during the race. It's something that the teams and drivers can use to their advantage, and it can be very helpful if they're having incidences going through certain corners every lap where the car's unsettled. They can adjust the brake balance to try and resolve that problem. It's something that the drivers can adjust on their steering wheel during the race as well. The formation lap is the lap before the start of the race, where all of the cars are driven round from the grid to form up once again on the grid, ready to then start their race. Some people call it a warm-up lap. It's basically just the one lap between when all of the team's personnel no longer touch the cars before the race. They all move away and get off the actual track itself. It's the lap between that happening and the race starting itself. So they'll all move away, the cars will go off on their formation lap, they'll come back round, and usually the person leading it, the person in pole position, will want to try and control the pack as much as possible, because otherwise they're going to be sat on their grid spot waiting for 30 seconds for everyone else to get into their grid spots with their brakes overheating, and it can cause problems in terms of getting a good start, which obviously you want to get at the start of the race. G-force is a physical force equivalent to 1 unit of gravity that is multiplied during rapid changes of direction or velocity, and drivers will experience severe G-forces in corners, acceleration and braking, and of course in any accidents that they have. Graining is what happens to the tyres when the car slides. Basically what happens is the sliding on the surface causes little bits of rubber, like little grains, to break away from the tyre's grooves, which then stick to the tread of the tyre and reduce tyre grip onto the track surface. Careful driving can clear the graining in a couple of laps. It's very, very possible to drive through the graining. But of course it will affect how the driver handles the car and the pace of the car and all of that sort of thing. Driving style, track conditions, car setup, fuel load, and the tyre compound itself will all play a role in whether or not graining happens and the severity of graining. But basically just the more a tyre slides, the more likely graining is. A gravel trap is basically just a bed of gravel that is on the outside of the corners, designed to bring cars that drive off the circuit or crash off the circuit to a halt before hitting the barriers. You might think because it's called a gravel trap that it's little bits of gravel. It's not. If you see gravel traps in person, the bits of gravel are huge. They are rocks, and sometimes they get flicked up and they hit drivers on their hands. I remember there was a team radio years ago where Roman Grosjean thought he'd broken his finger because a bit of gravel hit him as he was driving, and everyone was like, it's a bit of gravel, why are you being dramatic? It's not gravel, it's huge, it is rocks. Driving at speed and that hits you, it's gonna hurt. The hands device is the head and neck support device. That is a mandatory safety device that fits over the driver's shoulders and then connects to the back of their helmet to prevent excessive head and neck movement in the event of an accident. It's basically, it reduces whiplash and it stops the amount of G-force that some of these crashes have snapping the driver's necks. That's what it's there for. It is a very, very important safety feature. Marbles are the little bits of rubber that come off the tyres. I have actually got some from Silverstone last year. They are just little bits of tyre, little marbles of tyre that come off and end up on the track surface. And then at the end of each session, the track surface will be covered in lots of little marbles. When they let you on track after a Grand Prix, you can go and get some and be like, I've got a bit of a Formula 1 car. So it's quite cool. Marshals are course officials who oversee the safe running of the race. They are very often volunteers, so a lot of them don't get paid, and they are sometimes putting their life on the line for our sport. A lot of marshals have been injured or died in incidents with Formula 1 cars. That is why it's so important that drivers respect the flag system and respect anything that is put in place to help protect the marshals, because of course being on track, clearing the track up, doing whatever it is that they need to do on the track itself while cars are driving at hundreds of miles an hour is a very dangerous position to be in. They'll do a lot of things. They will observe the spectators to ensure that they don't endanger themselves or the competitors. So, for example, if there's any spectators throwing things, obviously that needs to be dealt with because that's dangerous. Any spectators who potentially would want to do a track invasion, things like that, they need to see that that's happening, and that's very important. Often that will be the job of security, but marshals are also important in terms of keeping an eye out. They're an extra pair of eyes and ears for the safe running of the event. They act as fire wardens. They help to remove stranded cars or drivers from the track. They wave flags to signal the condition of the track to the drivers. The whole flag system that I was talking about earlier, it's the marshals that wave those. They will go and clear the track up after any sort of accident or incident that leads to debris on the track. They sometimes are involved in helping repair the track in terms of the barriers and all of that sort of thing. They're very, very important for running the sport, and they often don't get enough recognition, especially because a lot of them don't get paid for it. They just do it because they love the sport. And finally, the stewards are the 3 high-ranking officials at each Grand Prix who are appointed to make decisions. This includes monitoring track limits, monitoring any sort of collisions, deciding on driver punishments, all of that sort of thing. Any penalties that are given out are given by the stewards. Any decisions in terms of any technical infringements, in terms of sporting infringements, anything in terms of having to follow the regulations of the sport, the stewards are in charge of policing that. So that is everything that I was going to talk about for today's episode of F1 for Beginners. I hope it's been useful for you. And what I'll do as well, I know that podcasts are predominantly an audio form, even though you can watch this one if you wanted to. What I'm going to do on the Pitboards and Podiums TikTok is I'll post on there with photos of all of the different flags, explaining them all on there as well, in case you wanted to be able to look at them rather than just hear me say like purple flag with a white circle, you know, so that you can see the flags yourself and then be able to recognise them when the season starts. Thank you very much for listening or watching if you watched, and I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please rate, like, subscribe, comment, all of the above. And do share the podcast as well if you enjoyed it. That would really, really be helpful. I would really appreciate that. I'll see you in a couple of days with my George Russell episode, and I'll be back with another F1 for Beginners episode next Friday. But before then, you have, of course, got George Russell in a couple of days, and then you've got Lando Norris next Wednesday. Thank you very much again for listening, and I will see you very soon. Bye!